Okay, that should fix the issues. I just had to make sure that there was not too much demand on the line, the internet. But yeah, you can ask me anything in the chat, in the comments. You can just ask about the FMF or work, the NHI, the work we've done on the NHI, the work we've done on EWC. Yeah, man, just anything. It's really up to you, and it's not for me to control this conversation or to tell you what to ask or anything like that. So you can just ask, and then in the meantime, maybe I'll just I think I'll read one of the Free Market Foundation's latest press releases. So it's a media release on the decision or on the decisions being made at South African Airways. So the media release goes, so Tito blinked and SAA will continue to fly the rich at the expense of the poor. And since it seems I am by myself, I think I might as well just play some music to pass the time. I hope you don't mind that too much. Okay. So yeah, so the media release goes, so Tito blinked and SAA will continue to fly the rich at the expense of the poor. This week was crucial in the standoff between Finance Minister Tito Mboweni in the Department of Public Enterprises, Minister Pravin Gordhan for the DPE Minister Pravin Gordhan for the future of failed state-owned airline. South African, I completely lost my track there. This week was crucial in the standoff between Finance Minister Tito Mboweni and the Department of Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan for the future of failed state-owned airline South African Airways. This prosperous attempt to resurrect SAA as envisaged by the DPE is a phoenix rising fantasy at the expense of the poor who will be deprived further of essential services and infrastructure. July 15 was the deadline for the Treasury to commit to stamping up the additional 10.3 billion and rising required to finance the business rescue plan. If not, SAA was headed for liquidation, but it appears Tito blinked. The commitment letter was signed and sent by the DPE and Treasury to the business rescue practitioners. Economic sanity has not prevailed unless Mboweni has agreed only to be committed to mobilizing funds, which will not come from Treasury. Even before COVID-19 and the collapse of the aviation industry, the local market had some 30% overcapacity, according to experts. Post the COVID crisis, private airlines will do what the private sector does best: regroup and compete for consumer business without the cushion of taxpayer funds to get them through 3 years of losses, as the BR plan foresees for the new SAA. So just imagine that. So you need taxpayer funds to get you through 3 years of losses. So they're actually planning for losses for the next 3 years. It's, I don't know why people are still trying to keep this thing alive. It's obviously dead. Anyway, it continues. Yet the BRP lists SARS as being owed 180 million rands in PAYE. Sister state-owned airline SA Express liquidation papers show it too owes SARS. Failure to pay PAYE is a criminal act. It is a battle between Mboweni's economic realism and the socialist ideology of Gordhan, who, steeped in the philosophy of command economics, believes that the state should own key enterprises, including a vanity airline, to fulfill a developmental role. Developmental is in quotes there, by the way, whatever that means. Mboweni, on the other hand, understands very well that the government has run out of money and that throwing another 10.3 billion into the SAA black hole is financial insanity. Yet to be paid is the previously committed 16.4 billion. No one has yet said from where these extra billions of funds will come. The rescue plan is deeply flawed. The practitioners have been unable to carry out their task without political interference, as required by the Companies Act, and which was the main reason cited by ex-CEO Vuyani Jarana in his resignation letter. The plan calls for an additional 10.3 billion to be made available from a treasury that cannot fund basic relief for those hit hardest by the COVID crisis without emergency borrowing, and the real cost is even higher. Also, concurrent creditors, many of which are small businesses, would be forced into investing in an apartheid dinosaur. The rescue plan only gives them 7 rand 50 cents on every rand they are owed. This means they are effectively, I think this should be 75 cents. But if you see how it's written here, it's written as 7.5 with an R in front of it. But I think this should be 75 cents. Yeah. This means they are effectively investing 92.5 cents for every rand owed by SAA. This may be legal, but it is certainly immoral. The 26.7 billion funding requirement proposed by the BRP includes 2.8 billion working capital, 2.2 billion for voluntary severance packages, 3.2 billion in tickets liability, which is to be paid in advance, 600 million rands over 3 years to refund general concurrent creditors at 7.5 cents in every rand. Oh, they are trying to say 7.5 cents because here, but they shouldn't have used the R. So here they say 90. Oh, the investors would be investing 92.5 cents for every rand owed by SAA. So yeah, so it's 7.5 cents that they are getting on every rand. So this is deeply unfair. So basically, you're getting back 7.5% of what you are owed. That's, I mean, okay, let me not say anything, but maybe they should have used percentages there instead of because it's just, yeah. Okay, so 3.2 billion in tickets liability to be paid in advance, 600 million rands over 3 years to refund general concurrent creditors at 7.5 cents in every rand, 1.7 billion over 3 years to aircraft lessors, 16.4 billion over 3 years to repay secured lenders, including South Africa's main commercial banks, and including 3.5 billion rand surplus, 3.5 billion rands plus, 160 million in interest owed to the Development Bank of South Africa. Excluded is the 2.15 billion needed to settle debts for SAA subsidiaries Mango, SAA Technical, and HF's 6.4 billion of expected losses for the next 3 years. Thus, the real cost is over 35 billion rands, 7 billion rands more. FMF CEO Leon Low said, despite not making a profit since 2011, receiving over 31 billion in the last decade, and demanding another 35 billion now of citizens' money. Make no mistake, government doesn't have any of its own, as the only cash it gets is from us. The DPE, irresponsible unions, and the banks whose loans are guaranteed debts believe that SAA deserves another chance to waste taxpayer money and deprive the poorest in society of essential services and infrastructure while subsidizing the rich to fly. Alta lunacy. Twaddle continues to be spoken about a national state-owned airline being essential to support tourism, but South Africa's tourism industry, which is on its knees begging for financial assistance, is being ignored by government. Yeah, so that basically speaks for itself. I mean, it's insanity to try and bail out SAA at this point, and one hopes that government would see that. But if they don't, what can you do? I mean, we don't have too many options here, because ultimately the voters have all the power, so they have to implement the right incentives. Also, I wrote an article on Stokvels. Maybe I'll read that next. So the title goes, "What's up, Stokvels? Liberalize informal banking sector to fuel growth." Okay, let me see if I can show you the article actually. Let me see. Yeah, because I am of the view that Stokvels are actually banks, and that you could actually meet a lot of people's needs if you recognized Stokvels as banks. see. I'm just trying to see now how I can show you this article. Aha, perfect. So it goes, what stops Stokvel's liberalize informal banking sector to fuel growth? So I didn't, I don't write the titles, by the way. I think City Press writes the titles. South Africa does not lack for banks, as Zakhele Mthembu, a regular contributor to the Free Market Foundation and to the Rational Standard, has persuasively argued. The popular Stokvel model of one member receiving a payout each month has all the features of a bank. This model is common in South Africa, having morphed into the sometimes brilliant, sometimes horrible WhatsApp Stokvels. Individuals effectively make monthly deposits which are lent out to the other members until that individual is paid back in a few months. There is a variation on this model in which interest is introduced. This allows members who don't borrow as much, in brackets savers, to earn an income from the Stokvel. In these Stokvels, members also contribute monthly, but the contributions are only similar in the beginning. Based on the amount of debts they have taken on, some members will also be liable for interest and therefore higher monthly payments. In the meantime, some members receive monthly payments if they are net creditors, while those who are net debtors are liable for those payments. Of course, some of these have problems, but some are relatively successful. It is interesting to observe that where friction arises, it is usually the net debtors complaining about the healthy payments some of the net creditors or savers are receiving. This is a common thread throughout South Africa's banking industry. The pension has grown while the indebted cheer with every interest rate cut. But nevertheless, some Stokvels have individuals mature enough to pursue a common interest based on the integrity of the people involved and no enforcement of the contracts by government. These people are the ones most likely to benefit if Stokvels can access traditional capital markets. It is insanity that if you are a pensioner living in a township, it is unlikely that any of your savings are invested in the same township. And this is really the point. I mean, how do we get people how do we give people the means to be able to invest in their own communities, in their own families, even or even relatives, like in their own in their own society, in the people that they interact with. So how do we do that? Because what is effectively happening now, because of this is a purely a matter of regulation. What government has done through the regulations they have, and it's the cumulative effect. So you can't really point to one thing. It's regulations on the insurance industry, it's regulations on the banking industry, it's regulations on the financial sector as a whole that have created this problem where basically people cannot afford to invest in their own communities even if they wanted to. First of all, in South Africa, interest rates are depressed by the South African Reserve Bank, so that limits the amount of the return you can get on your capital effectively if you are a pensioner. So there is that, because what people need to understand is that the Reserve Bank sets the base interest rate for the entire economy. So every other rate, whether it be dividends, whether it be what other rates exist in the economy, whether it be dividends, whether it be rents, whether it be just anything that generates a return, like the debt return is ultimately has to beat the return being represented by the not even the repo rate, the prime lending rate. Theoretically, the repo, you have to consider the repo rate as well, but for our purposes, I think if you just look at the prime rates, like whatever return that you get on any investment has to exceed the return that you would get by just putting your money in the bank account and letting it sit there. So because of that fact, by keeping interest rates low, and I'll show you an interesting chart too. Okay, I just thought of something interesting now. So I'll show you an interesting chart, and then after that I'll show you another chart just to compare, and you will understand why I'm doing that in a moment. So we're at the Reserve Bank website. So what we're looking for the rates. So we need it to be. So this graph actually starts in the year 2000. So you can't go beyond that year. So if you look at the shape of this graph, just look at how it looks. Let me just see if you can see it. Yeah. So you look at the shape of this graph, and then you go red. See, so it's this is the US Federal Reserve Federal Funds Rate. So if you look at these peaks, the peaks have been getting lower over time in the US Federal Reserve Federal Funds Rate. It's between 2000 and 2020. And if you look here, same thing, the peaks have been getting low. So basically, we've been on the same interest rate downtrend as the USA and the rest of the world. And so this is what has really limited the ability of pensioners to earn a return in this in the economy, and that it limits the options because if you let's say the interest rate was taken to 12%, the prime lending rate was at 12% now, then it means that as a pensioner, you would be guaranteed at least 12% return every year. And then after inflation, it will reduce, but you still get a decent return after inflation. Whereas now, I think inflation was somewhere around between 3.5 and 4%. So now with the prime lending rate at 7.25 and inflation is around 4%, then basically what has happened is that the best you can get is 3.25 for your money. So you can get a 3.25% return for your money, and that's if inflation doesn't go up, and it also depends on what the composition of your personal basket is, because not everyone's basket is. So that's why CPI is basically, to be honest, quite it's a BS number basically, because it measures an aggregate where there's actually no single individual who's going to exactly match the basket that is used to calculate the CPI, the index. And so that's it doesn't, like, it's good for as something to track the general trend of prices over time, but in terms of telling you what each person's individual experience of inflation is, it can't do that. And so this is why government should allow people to have their freedom to choose, to be able to choose different options in terms of banks, investments, and so on. And to do that, you need to really, going back to this article now. So this is where we ended. It is insanity that if you're a pensioner living in a township, it is unlikely that any of your savings are invested in the same township. Something is broken. We have a proliferation of small banks with various innovative business models targeting their markets. These are the Stokvels, including machonisas, of course. Yet this flurry of activity seemingly cannot be scaled up to the point where it starts having a meaningful impact in the communities that the savers of this country have to live in. This is not advocating for some ill-advised regulation. Sorry, the reason why I stopped now, I keep forgetting that I have to keep communicating, because it's a live stream, so I keep forgetting that. But yeah, oh shit! Now I'm showing you my. Yeah, So I keep forgetting that I have to, keep certain things in mind. Yeah, perfect. So anyways, I was saying, this is not advocating for some ill-advised regulation prescribing that pension funds invest in townships, as that would be an unmitigated disaster, with people who ought not be investing in a market they don't understand will be doing so for the sake of compliance. This will have disastrous consequences and a negative reputation for township investment. What is required is unleashing the entrepreneurial forces already operating in the townships. It is of no use to fight the people, so government has to get out of the way. Indeed, Stokvels are being used to finance property acquisitions, but there are problems of trust in large groups. Without the use and enforcement of contracts, it is unlikely to grow beyond a certain limit. Everywhere you look, South Africans are striving to make a better future for themselves and their families. Stokvels are naturally risk-averse if their members are allowed to control them. In other words, if the contracts can be enforced. The problem with calling Stokvels banks is that, of course, the Banking Acts, the Mutual Banking Acts, and the Cooperative Banking Act collectively claim a legal monopoly on defining what is and is not a bank. We are told about Basel compliance regulations. So this is Basel 3, the latest iteration of the regulations, which are supposed to be a global standard for making banks safer, sounder, and less prone to the disaster that happened during 2008, for example. We are told about Basel compliance regulations, millions in capital, stringent information requirements. So the millions in capital refers to the 10 million that you need to have in capital to start a mutual bank, and the 250 million you need to have in capital to start a commercial bank. Stringent information requirements, yet no member of a Stokvel or any Mashonisa has to worry about this. Yet these institutions fulfill the requirements of deposit-taking lending institutions, namely banks. The path to the growth of these institutions lies in removing the regulations that make what they do illegal at a large scale. Any attempt at formalization through imposing regulations on the sector is a non-starter. Government has to realize that it has two fundamental choices. First, to continue to try and impose a theory of how an economy is supposed to work on South Africans, and therefore continue to see living standards decline and unemployment and poverty grow. Second, government can follow the people and allow the people to lead. And this is exactly what happened in China, by the way, in the 70s. So what happened with when Deng came in the late 1970s, I think it was December 1978. So when Deng came into power, the reforms that he actually implemented were things that the Chinese people had been doing illegally up to that point. These things had been growing, and Mao had sort of been ignoring them and trying to stamp them out, but they had still been persisting. So it wasn't that a communist in Deng converted to a capitalist. It was more like capitalism converted the communist Deng, and converted because the Chinese people were simply going about their business, engaging in free trade, while because they were forced to, because Mao's policies were making them starve. A lot of people died. So in that circumstance, what can you do? You have to trade with each other, and you get the same thing in North Korea too, where people tell you the stories. Some of the people who have escaped to South Korea, they tell you the stories that we at first we didn't know what to do. This was referring to the famine in the 1990s in North Korea. At first, we didn't know what to do, but over time we learned that if we could trade with each other, we could survive. That's an actual quote from a North Korean defector. I forget the guy's name, but that quote stuck with me because it showed me the power of markets. You cannot kill free markets. They will, no matter what you do, free markets will always exist. Yeah. Oh, Lucanio, yeah, Lucanio is actually a colleague. We were at the Explore Data Science Academy together. Nice to see you, bro. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Lucanio. The Big Mac index does have its own problems though as well, because as much as McDonald's has a global supply chain and a lot of things go into making a Big Mac, but yeah, I suppose I see your point, because it is a global supply chain, and because of that they have to find the cheapest source for every input. So I guess in that way you could say the Big Mac index is a better measure. Yeah. Unfortunately, Tebucho, it does seem that is the case. Like, I mean, there's a, we've been trying to communicate with government about the folly of some of their actions, but it doesn't seem to be making an effect in terms of what gets implemented. So I mean, we just have to keep trying, I suppose, because we can't give up on this kind. I mean, that's another thing that people don't understand. Like when these people are destroying this country, where are we supposed to go? Because I remember when I was interviewing for a job in Germany, and then they came at the time to do the interview and go to Germany, and then I just thought that imagine me having to deal with all that snow. I mean, and not being able to speak Zulu to anyone. I mean, for months, even sometimes, or just maybe over the phone only, or over Skype or the internet, but just generally not being able to speak Zulu. I mean, those things, they matter to your person's quality of life. And I just thought about that, and I don't know, like it's not for me. And I think I would struggle with any other country other than South Africa. I'm too used to this place, and I want to live here. I want to make this place work. Like I want to find out what we need to do to make sure that everyone can push behind the same vision. Can sort of, okay, we don't even have to get behind the same vision. We don't even need to get behind the same vision. Scrap that. But what can we do to make sure that everyone leaves each other alone and allows each person to pursue their own version of happiness? That's what I want to know, because it seems to me that is the real problem with South Africa. That's what's been lacking. Yeah, I've been talking and talking. I forgot that I still had the window on. But to live in it, and I mean, I did my first live stream this week on Wednesday, I think, and then I did a live stream on Thursday, and then today. And so yeah, I mean, I'm trying to the reason I did this deliberately, the reason why I'm trying to do this in a manner I'm trying to do it in where I release repeat live streams, is I'm trying to learn quickly, because the only way to learn anything is just to do it. So I'm trying to learn quickly, and the only way to do that is just to do it and fail publicly. And I am willing to do that because yeah, no, yeah, you're right, Lucanio. I thought about it a little bit after you said it, and you're right. It's a decent measure. The Big Mac index is a decent measure. Just because, I mean, for me, the big thing is that McDonald's has a global supply chain, and the same things go into producing each Big Mac, and there's a good variety that goes into producing a Big Mac. And it accounts for things that you wouldn't expect, because, for example, McDonald's owns a lot of property. So the Big Mac index should include the price of land as well. You know what I mean? So even where it doesn't own property, where it has to rent from someone, that also factors into the price of a Big Mac. So yeah, Lucanio, you're absolutely spot on there, my brother. Yeah. That's why you're a data scientist, man. Yeah. So yeah, that's true. But anyway, yeah, to go on, let me go finish reading this article. Government has to realize that it has two fundamental choices. First, to continue to try and impose a theory of how the economy is supposed to work. On South Africans, and therefore continue to see living standards decline and unemployment and poverty grow. Second, government can follow the people and allow the people to lead. This requires changing the legislation to stop the provision of law in which the people are criminalized for peaceful acts. Some Stokvel members commit crimes such as fraud, theft, or robbery, but these crimes are not unique to Stokvels. The focus should be on protecting private property and therefore dealing with the criminals through the normal justice system. It is insanity that if you are a pensioner living in a township, it is unlikely that any of your savings are invested in the same township. So this is basically just recalling the earlier point. The degree to which the individual rights of Stokvel members are protected is the degree to which these institutions can attract investment into their communities. I think this is an important point. So the more freedom that Stokvels have to operate freely is also the more freedom they are able to is also equal to the freedom that they are able to exercise in producing positive changes in their community. And so the more freedom you have, the more good you can do, but also the more bad things you can do. We can't avoid that. And so regulation tries to stop the bad, but then it doesn't. There's no accounting for the fact that you also stop the good, because with the bed of freedom, like with people, producing substandard goods, for example, all of these things, with people doing that, there also comes the freedom to innovate and to produce high quality goods and things like that. So there's always this balance that government is not very good at reaching, and I don't think any regulator can have the power, because it's a purely a market phenomenon, and markets determine the ultimate values. Let me just check the live stream again. Yeah. I see, Lucanio, you are laughing there. Oh, sorry. By the way, everyone must just know that there's a bit of a delay. So by the time you hear by the time you hear my reaction to a particular chat, it's by the time I've probably moved on to something else. So there's a bit of a delay. So just be aware of that. But other than that, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and it's formal economic institutions need to be able to conclude legally binding contracts and not violate government regulations and legislation. On the other hand, for these institutions to grow without significant external investment, it will require them being capacitated to acquire goods and services from other parts of the economy to fuel that growth. So basically, what I'm saying here is that for the current formal industry, the formal banks, the formal insurance companies, the formal businesses that exist right now, in order to be able to work with informal businesses, including Stokvels, machonisas, and all of that, it's a matter of being able to conclude legally binding contracts. You can't conclude legally binding contracts with someone if government has deemed that person to what that person does to be illegal, even if they are not enforcing the illegal the declaration of illegality. So even like right now, for example, in many Stokvels are technically run afoul of the regulations in terms of their banking, various banking acts, the three main banking acts, and so because of that, a Stokvel can't, as a corporation or a grouping of individuals or a company, go or as a bank, go to another bank and say, okay, we've extended the credit facility of, let's say, 20,000 rands to this business. We would like you to share some of that risk with us. For example, things like that. Maybe you will give 5,000 rands to the business, and then we will give them 15,000 rands. Like, mutually beneficial partnerships which start to attract more capital into the townships and develop the place. I mean, it's so, I don't know if I'm the only one, but it's so frustrating that, like, even if today, if you go to a township, the same townships you grew up in, like, I'm 29 years old right now. The township I grew up in, where I was born in 29 years ago, if you go to the same township today, you still see the same levels of poverty. I mean, there have been some improvements, but basically not much. I mean, you still have those sections which are still known as pure sections, and it's still shacks. I mean, I don't understand how anyone in government can live with a situation like this. I would be willing to try everything. I would, even if I was a socialist, if I really wanted to solve this problem, I would do something like have each province run an experiment. Say, okay, Western Cape, maybe you will have socialist policies. Gauteng, you will have more libertarian free market policies. Maybe Gauteng will be the most deregulated province. It will have no income tax. It will have almost zero corporate income tax, and just maybe, I don't know, 8% VAT or something. Oh, by the way, I calculated. I remember it was last year. I calculated that you could fund the entire a minarchist, a sort of minimal South African states, which just includes police, the justice system, SARS. What else did I include? Treasury, the South African police, the judiciary, intelligence services, foreign affairs, defense. You could fund all of that with just 11% VAT. That's it. No other taxes. Right now we have 14% VAT or 15% VAT. Sorry, 15% VAT. On top of that, we have income taxes which range from 18 to 46%, around about 46-48%. And then we also have corporate income taxes, which are currently at 18% as well. what else? VAT, I've mentioned VAT, or you also have the excise taxes on alcohol, on alcohol, on cigarettes, you have the import tariffs, you also have import excise taxes, taxes on specific goods, and then tariffs on, like, for example, if we are allowed under the WTO rules to apply tariffs to certain imports, if we can argue that it was that other country was dumping that product into the country. So basically, you are allowed to make your citizens pay more money for the good, even if they could get it cheaper, and on the reasoning that the other country is dumping the cheap good into your country. So even though the good is being demanded by your citizens and they are getting it cheaply, then you see that as a problem, so you raise the price through taxation. So we also do that. I mean, some of these taxes are crazy. Sometimes they can be as much as 2,000%. I must remember one day to on one of these podcasts to show the actual tax tables for tariffs, for import tariffs for SARS, and you will be shocked. I promise you. So this is the country we have to live in, unfortunately. Yeah. So our politics has created an expectation of something for nothing. Everyone wants growth, but no one wants to sacrifice for it. Ain't that the truth? In addition, the savers are envied and robbed seemingly at every opportunity. That is not all. Government criminalizes its poorest citizens for choosing banks that make sense for them and their needs. This injustice needs to end, and the economic freedom of all South Africans must be recognized and protected. So that's it basically. I mean, government has to realize the folly of what they're doing at some point. But okay. Okay, can I just say that the internet is crazy? I just saw someone named I love Harry Butts in the comments. So I'm just glad this stream is not being monetized, because otherwise we'd be in trouble. Hey Olive, hey, nice of you to join us. Thank you for coming. So hey. What? Show some foot. What? You people are crazy. Yeah. True. Yeah, Lucanio is absolutely right. I mean, the thing about this hashtag puts South Africans first is that they miss the point in so many areas. I mean, like there's a lot of competent Zimbabweans who could be doing a decent job, like in STEM fields, in certain other areas, like more technical fields, and then they're not given the opportunity just because of work permits. And these people could be adding value to the economy and ultimately making life better for South Africans. And the permitting process is crazy. And I remember, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this, but my landlord was a Zimbabwean, and he was just telling me, I think a few months back, that it's almost impossible to get the visas and permits legally. You basically have to break the law, and then you have to pay a bribe. Like there's no there's no other way to do it. He was telling me that it's so inefficient. Yeah, so basically that's what you have to do. But yeah, look, another good point, my man. Like it's crazy how things are. Yeah, man. Like we treat these poor people as if they are the causes of all our problems, which just makes you see that this thing of like race, like white people being responsible for all our problems. I mean, this idea that you just need to dispossess whites, or they need to give back the land and all of that stuff. It shows you that it's not really about what they say it's about, because you'll find the same people arguing that we should kick out Zimbabweans out of the country and Nigerians. And then and I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, these people have no, like, by your definition, these people don't have, like, are exactly the same as the people that you say have no power, both in terms of race, but in terms of material circumstances. These people are just as poor as South Africans, or even more poor, or even poorer. And then they come here to make a better life for themselves. So I couldn't have said it better, my bro. Bro, and that's the crazy thing, man. I mean, how can, like, you have all these qualified Zimbabweans who could be adding value to South Africa, and then they end up going to Europe, they end up going to America. I think Ata Mutambari, you remember Ata Mutambari from the MDCT, he used to work for NASA. I think, yeah, he was an engineer for NASA. So yeah, someone like that. I mean, we could have stolen someone like that. I mean, even the teachers. Zimbabwe has great teachers. These people we could be inviting and getting here to work for us, or to help build our education system, which is struggling. So that's unfortunately government doesn't think like that. They're very short-sighted. So yeah, what can you do? I've actually enjoyed the stream. There's been a lot of healthy engagement here, so that's it's been good. Thank you, Lucanio. Thank you, Olive. Thank you, Debuho. Yeah, I think I have everyone, and thank you. I love Harry Butts. So that's I think I'll call it a day. I will see you guys on Monday, and thank you very much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me, Rada. It's been great. I appreciate you taking your time to spend your Friday night with me. So thanks.